So my name is Joseph Pugliese. I teach in Media and Cultural Studies. The unit I'm teaching this semester is Forensic Media. There are different types of media that forensics use, like forensic genetics, forensic DNA, forensic biometrics. And we basically look at the way in which media sheds new light on investigative procedures in forensic fields, like photography, film, CCTV, social media. And look at the integration between media and law, effectively. Justice, representation. A variety of students. We get students from law who are really interested in it. Media students, because they know that once they get into the field, they can be assigned legal cases, and so they need to be reflexive on the uses of forensics in court cases. We get students from cultural studies, from broad section of the humanities that come in. It's a fabulous dynamic, actually, because it brings in such a variety of different perspectives on the topics that we discuss. One of the things that I'm really committed to is underpinning the units that I teach with what I would call an ethics of difference, where we basically learn how to negotiate different perspectives, different points of view, how to argue cogently for your point of view, but also how to be attentive to listening to the other person, or to adopting a perspective which challenges your fundamental understandings of the world, or a particular idea, or of a particular position. And so they get a particular reading on a topic that we're discussing. And so, of course, the law students want to ask all the legal questions about forensics and media. The media students want to focus on the technologies and how they shape, mediate our understanding of what we're seeing. The cultural studies students ask questions which are basically philosophical. Why are we doing this? How do we know it's a body? What constitutes a body? Why is it dead? How do we define death? You get a whole interesting take of different perspectives, and students enjoy that, and so do I, of course. But there are other forms of violence that I'm interested in, and that is, what we would call in cultural studies epistemic violence, where there are knowledge systems that look normal. Basically, you're comfortable with them, but you mightn't be aware that they're actually producing forms of injustices because you're not at the receiving end of those injustices. So I look at diverse communities and work with diverse communities, specifically Indigenous communities and refugee and asylum seeker communities, often misrepresented in the media, potential terrorists, queue jumpers. They're what we would call forms of epistemic violence, where the way in which they are represented compounds, in a sense, the violence they've experienced in person in, say, fleeing persecution. I actually say, be prepared to experience what I would call secondary trauma here. We are positioned, in a sense, as secondary witnesses to those acts of violence, and we discuss what it means to witness something that you weren't prepared for, to witness something that really profoundly impacts you emotionally. But we also say you need to process that. You need to become cognizant of ways in which we can begin to analyse, address, and try and transform the structures that are at work that are producing this sort of violence. The project that I'm just completing now, which is a collaborative project with colleagues in Australia but also overseas, it's an ARC-funded project called Deathscapes, Racial Violence in the Settler States. Now, what was innovative about this was we decided we just didn't want to have an academic publication out of this. We established a public open access website where we often worked with communities, say Indigenous communities. You can access these particular case histories and look at representations by the communities of the ones that they've lost, testimonies, creative works that try and do justice to what the community has lost. So my sense is that we're in a privileged position as academics to have all these extraordinary resources, and really it's exciting to put it back into the public domain. This is an extraordinary department. It's a brilliant collection of individuals who've got extraordinary knowledges, and we get these transformative moments in classes where there's synergies, exchanges, and ideas being percolated and disseminated and turned into things, into films, essays, writings, journalist articles, etc. So there's a sense of curiosity, excitement and enthusiasm about thinking, about exploring and about pushing boundaries and changing things for the better.